The wind came off the flats with grit in its teeth and a taste of rain that wouldn't fall. Main Street yawned like it had just woken up wrong. Doors open, eyes half-lidded, hands already clenching for no good reason. A dog slept in the shade of the pump. The blacksmith hammered slow, each blow landing like a thought you didn't want to have. Then the drifter walked in. He looked like any other quiet ranch hand between jobs, coat the color of sunburned dirt, hat dragged low, boots gone to seams. Nobody who later talked about him mentioned his face. They mentioned the way he moved straight down the middle of the street, not glancing left or right, like a man who had already chosen sides in a fight no one had announced yet. Sheriff Harlan saw him first, because Harlan saw everything, even when his boots were up and his chair tipped back against the jail's porch rail. He was near 50, salt at his temples, badge scratched from too many shirt washes and too many nights leaning in doorways making himself the line other men had to step across. The drifter stopped at the bottom of the steps. He didn't touch his hat brim. He didn't smile. "You the law," he said. Not a question. "Most days," Harlan said. "State your want." The drifter reached inside his coat. Harlan's boots came off the rail. The coat parted. No pistol showed. Instead, the drifter drew a small, oval thing pinched between forefinger and thumb, dangling from a thin chain that caught the sun like a knife tip. A locket. Old gold. Scratched. He set it on the top step, like it was something delicate that remembered being important. "Found this," he said. "Where?" Harlan kept his voice flat. "Dry Creek cut. That's 50 miles. I walk quick. Name?" "Rig." Harlan bent, slow, like the locket might jump. He cupped it. It was warm from another man's hand. He thumbed the hinge. The lid opened with a soft complaint and showed him a woman's face no bigger than a postage of sky. Braided hair, a mouth set firm, like it didn't give much away. Her eyes were sharp as a hawk's and looked straight through whoever had held the locket last. On the other side, scratched into gold with something dull. A single name. Ilara. The porch boards tilted under Harlan. He didn't show it on his face. "You picked this up off the ground?" he asked. "No." "Then how?" "Was hanging from a cross," Riggs said. The chair legs found the floor. A cross. Wood. Weathered. Fresh turned dirt at the base. Riggs' voice had the shape of a man reporting weather. "You dig?" "No." Harlan shut the locket. The click seemed to travel down the street and make the dog by the pump open one eye. "Come inside." They went into the office. The place smelled like coffee, long abandoned, and ledger papers sweating in the heat. On the wall hung a map with a grease pencil line showing how far the Pecos had crawled back from itself. On the desk was a Bible nobody touched, and a stack of folded wanted posters most folks didn't need. Harlan set the locket on the blotter and stayed standing. "You said Dry Creek." "Shale shelf above the cut. There's a split ravine. End of it's a circle of stones. The cross was dead center." "Tracks?" Riggs shook his head. "Nothing I could see. No horses, no boots, no moccasins. The wind was fresh, but not that fresh. It was wrong." "Wrong how?" "Like a cross grew there overnight." Harlan pressed both palms to the desk. The wood felt cooler than his skin. "Why bring it here?" "Figured it belonged to someone. A woman named Ilara," Riggs said, eyes on the locket like the name had teeth. "Figured the town would know which someone." Harlan hated the way the room's corners tightened. He looked at Rigg. The man met his eyes without leaning forward or back. There was a steadiness in him Harlan recognized from men who had fought a lot and talked little. "You know what you've handed me," Harlan said. "No." "A storm," Harlan said. Ilara was the name of a settler woman taken north of here 3 summers back. That wagon train bled from both ends. We found one of the women later. Not her. Some said she'd been sold. Some said she'd married a Kiowa. Some said she'd drowned in rains that never came. People stopped saying much of anything after that. Rig didn't blink. Now you've got a locket, hanging from a cross, fresh dirt. Now I've got more than that, Harlan said. He picked up the locket again, thumbed it open like maybe the little picture would have changed in the last minute and shown him a different answer. It hadn't. Outside, an iron tire hissed as the blacksmith dropped it in his barrel. Someone laughed too loud at the saloon and then choked it off, like they'd forgotten what was funny. "Where you sleeping tonight?" Harlan asked. "Nowhere long." "Don't leave." "Wasn't asking permission." Harlan slid the locket into his vest pocket and felt the shape of it settle against his ribs like a coin he didn't want to spend. "You walk out, men could die," he said. Rig's jaw worked. Maybe a smile, maybe a flinch. "Men die if I stay?" "They die either way, likely," Harlan said. "But I'd rather I knew why." Rig's eyes went to the window, to the white square of street, to the door. "I'll be at the livery. Shade's good." He left like a man leaving a church before the prayer for the dead. Harlan stood alone a long minute. It wasn't the locket that hurt. It was the name inside it. That name dragged other names behind it, and each name had a face, and each face had a door Harlan had knocked on. He took the locket back out. He opened it. He told himself the same thing he always told himself when the work got narrow and the distance between choices went razor thin. Make it smaller. Cut it to bones you can count. He closed the locket and stepped out to cut. By noon, the story had already walked faster than any horse. It had gone from the boarding house porch to the store counter to the bar top and into a dozen mouths, each with a different tongue. The version at the blacksmith's had the drifter pulling the locket off a dead Kiowa's neck. The version in the saloon had it dripping blood that sizzled when it hit the floor. The version at Mrs. Gant's pie table had it glowing like a coal. Harlan started at the edges and worked inward. Store, livery, feedlot, schoolhouse. At the livery he found Rig, as promised, in the shade eating jerky like a man who'd forgotten it was food and just needed the salt. The drifter's saddle was decent leather that had been cared for by someone else first. "You make enemies easy," Harlan said. "Only the ones looking for friendship," Rig said. "You see anyone ride in behind you this morning?" "I don't look back much." "You look back when I tell you," Harlan said. He wasn't trying to be hard. He was trying to keep the rope tight between here and sundown. Rig chewed, swallowed. "All right." Harlan left him to his shade and crossed to Sam Bixby's store. The bell over the door gave a bright little scream. Sam looked up from his ledger like it had bit him. "You get tall news," Sam said. "I always do," Harlan said, and took a paper sack for show so they could talk without looking like men who were making plans. Sam adjusted his spectacles. "I hear riders north." "From who?" "Eddie Cobb," Sam said. "Kid's got ears like a mule. Says he heard them on the ridge. Says the ground was humming under his boots." "Eddie's boots are 2 sizes big," Harlan said, but his hand had closed around the sack the way you grab a rail when a train jumps. "Sheriff," Sam said, voice dipping. "If it's Kiowa." "If it is, I'll talk." "Talk." "Talk first," Harlan said, "and build second." Sam licked his lips and nodded like a man who had broken more than one bad tooth and kept chewing. Harlan stepped back out into the light and found Eddie Cobb, where Eddie always was when he wasn't anywhere he should be, perched on the rail of the old well like a hawk chick that hadn't grown its sense yet. "You got ears today," Harlan said. Eddie ducked his head, eyes bright. You heard too? They're close. I felt them in the ground, felt them in my knees. That means a lot of horses. You ever been wrong? Harlan asked. About horses? Nope. You tell anyone else? Maybe, Eddie said, already guilty. Then go home. Stay off roofs. If I need you, I'll come. Eddie nodded, turned, then turned back. Sheriff, if it's about that locket. What do you know about that? Harlan asked. My uncle was on the train, Eddie said. He told me a name once. Ilara. He told me not to say it much. Then don't, Harlan said. Eddie swallowed hard and went. Harlan walked the street. He told himself not to look at the church because he'd look, and it would put a thought in his mouth he didn't want to taste. He looked anyway. The white building sat with its door open like a tooth missing from a jaw. The bell rope hung through the gap just enough to move in the wind. Brother Whit's shadow drifted inside, busy with things that made sense to Brother Whit, and to no one else. Harlan turned away and met the sun head-on. It had slid to the west a touch. Hours had shortened. He went back to the jail and took the locket out again, and placed it on the desk, and studied it like it might ask him a question he could answer. The engraved name, Ilara, stood there like a door nobody wanted to open. He pinched the hinge and looked again at the girl in the oval. Some part of his brain tried to age her down in the photograph, to see her as a child, to see who she had been before she was hard-eyed and braid-tied. It didn't work. She stayed herself. Bootsteps hit the porch. Harlan put the locket away and looked up as the door flicked open. It was May Mercer, the schoolmarm. She was 25 and built out of rope and gentleness and the kind of stubborn that didn't make a sound. Dust powdered the hem of her skirt like pollen. You heard, Harlan said. Everyone heard, she said. Her voice was steady. Her hands were not. Is it true? It's something, Harlan said. May's eyes went to the ledger stack and then to the vest pocket where the chain looped out. Who's Ilara? Someone's daughter, someone's sister, Harlan said, which was truth enough, and a lie besides. I've got children sleeping on benches, May said, jaw tight. You tell me if I should wake them. Not yet. She held his eyes. Harlan. Not yet, he repeated. And the second time had to be in order, because his belly had suddenly learned the word soon and didn't like it. May nodded once, like she could fold the fear and set it on a shelf for a later she didn't trust would come. She started to turn. May, Harlan said. She looked back. If this sits on your doorstep, he said. If it ever does. The words jammed. He fixed them. Come find me. May searched his face as if there were a map under the skin. She must not have liked the lines. I always do, she said, and left. The room got smaller when she took her steadiness with her. Harlan went out, made a circuit, said words to men with rifles that meant lower them unless you see eyes inside the sights, said words to women with brooms that meant sweep indoors. He was a sheriff, but he was also a weather vane. Folks watched his hat, and if it didn't blow off, they thought the wind was just a wind. By 3, the sky had gone that copper gray that sometimes means rain and sometimes means you were born under the wrong star. By 4, the first rider appeared on the ridge. He came alone, small as a fly against the swell of land behind him, then big as a man when he dropped into the flats and came on at a long, easy canter, horse picking its way through the scrub like it knew the town as well as any of them. He didn't stop at the first porch or the second. He rode straight to the jail. Harlan was waiting. Riggs stood in the shade of the livery, too far to talk, close enough to hear. Half the town watched from behind curtains, their breath fogging the inside of their own glass. The rider slid off in one smooth motion. His face was painted white across the eyes. He wore a shirt the color of clay and leggings the color of a storm. He had a carbine, but it lay flat against his pony like it was sleeping. He looked at Harlan like a man looks at a rock he might have to work around. "You the law," he said in careful English. "I am." "You have a man," the rider said, and his gaze drifted past Harlan to Rig in the shade like a needle pulled by a magnet. "He took what hangs at a grave." "The locket," Harlan said. "The locket," the rider agreed. He lifted his hand. The sunlight made thin silver shapes along his knuckles. He showed Harlan what hung at his own throat on a thong of rawhide. Another locket, twin to the first, duller from years of skin. He didn't take it off. He didn't need to. The point had been made. Harlan said, "Who sent you?" "Crow in the water," the rider said. And there it was. The stone dropped into the pond, the ripples marching outward. Harlan had not heard that name said aloud in 6 years. It made the air colder. "Crow wants what?" "The man," the rider said. "And the locket." "Why?" "So the ground will stop shifting," the rider said, which wasn't an answer, and was all the answer Harlan would get from a messenger. "Where is Crow?" The rider tilted his chin north. The ridgeline sat a quarter-mile off, coy in the heat shimmer. "We camp there. Sunset. Bring the man." "And if we don't?" The rider's eyes didn't change. "We come for him." Rig stepped off the livery shade and into light. He didn't hurry. He looked like a man who had already spent his polite words and would pay cash for the rest. "You can talk to me direct," Rig said. The rider considered whether this was worth it. He decided it was. "You pull the locket from the grave." "I found it hanging from a cross that had no name," Rig said. "The name is in the dirt," the rider said. "Your hand shook the root." Rig said nothing to that because there wasn't much to say. "By supper," the rider repeated. He put his foot in the pony's hair and flowed back up. "No tricks." "Tell Crow if he wants a talk. I'll bring a talk," Harlan said. The rider's mouth twitched. "Crow wants his piece of the world put back how it was before you moved it," he said. He turned the pony with a touch, and was gone the way dust goes when it has decided to be elsewhere. The street breathed out. Somewhere, a glass clinked. Rig stood in front of Harlan without moving closer. "You believe him?" "I've never met a Kiowa messenger who thought his words were suggestions," Harlan said. "You going to deliver me?" "I'm going to keep this town standing and men breathing," Harlan said. "If that means putting you in front of a fire to talk, we'll talk. If it means something else—" He let the "if" hang. Rig half smiled without humor. "I've heard worse plans." "You got a better." "Not from shade," Rig said. Harlan nodded. "Then we move." He sent a runner to the roofs. He had the men with rifles change their posts so they could see the creek and the ridge both. He told Sam to fill every water barrel. He told Mrs. Gant to feed the children early and put them on the floor nearest the cellar door. He told May to gather what she would grab if the house had only a minute left to be a house. He didn't walk to the church. He didn't have to. The church walked to him in the shape of Brother Whit, who glided across the street with his hands folded like he was carrying a dove that didn't squirm. "Sheriff," Whit said. His collar was white enough to be cruel. "I hear we have visitors." "We do." "You will stand with righteousness," Whit said, as if that were the same thing as standing with him. "I will stand with sense," Harlan said. Whit's smile stepped off his face and took a seat where only he could see it. "Sense is a poor shepherd." "Righteousness is a worse cook," Harlan said. "It burns everything." Whit's eyes softened in that way of his that made Harlan's palms itch. "You'll call for my bell at dawn if this turns ugly," Wit said. "You'll want the town gathered." "I'll call for quiet," Harlan said. "And I'll call for you to keep your rope still, unless I say, or God reaches down and takes your hand and makes you do it." Wit looked up at the bell rope moving just a hair in the draft. "God's hand is always on mine." Harlan left before he said anything he couldn't make smaller later. By late afternoon, the camp rose on the flats north of the creek, the kind of camp that meant business. Smoke stacked in gray lines. Teepees stood like pencils stuck in a schoolboy's fist. Horses danced on their pickets, nickering at everything that smelled like trouble. From the jail roof, Harlan saw it all. Rig stood beside him. Neither man needed a spyglass. The distance wasn't far enough to justify glass. "That him?" Rig asked, indicating the tallest shape by the main fire. "Crow in the water," Harlan said. The man wore a bone necklace that caught the sun, and red bars crossed his cheekbones like two thoughts that never agreed. He stood like he'd been carved into place by the wind. Rig scratched the corner of his jaw. "Big." "Quiet," Harlan said, "until he isn't. Then he's wind over a wheat field. Everything leans." "What's he want with me?" "You took his string," Harlan said. "You said the woman in the Locket's Ilara," Rig said. "What's she to him?" "That's the part I don't know," Harlan said. "Yet?" They watched. The town watched them watch. Time wobbled on its legs like a colt. An hour before sundown, a second rider detached and came at a trot across the creek, straight as a surveyor's line. He didn't stop until his pony's breath fogged Harlan's boot. "By supper," he reminded. Harlan said, "We'll come." The rider looked past him to the street where children were being tugged indoors, and where May Mercer stood with her hands on a little girl's shoulders, bending to say something in a soft voice that made the child's face relax even as her eyes stayed wide. Rig followed the rider's gaze. "Who's the kid?" he asked. "Somebody who's going to teach every adult here how to act," Harlan said. The rider left. The creek went back to talking to itself. "Eat," Harlan told Rig. Rig nodded like a man who had already considered the idea and approved. "You too." "I'll chew leather on the way," Harlan said. He took the locket from his vest one last time and thumbed it open again. The woman looked as unmoved as ever by anything he could do. He closed it and tucked it away. He stepped down off the roof and onto the porch and into the last stretch of afternoon where the sun turns the world into brass and the air tastes like coins. He felt the town gather itself behind him. He felt the camp gather itself in front. He felt the few feet of ordinary ground between the two turn into a thin, shaking bridge that he would have to walk in the dark. At the door, he met May again. She had the little girl by the hand, dark hair, serious mouth, a doll with a button eye clutched tight. "What's her name today?" Harlan asked. May's throat moved. "Lark," she said, "because she sings before she sleeps. Keep her close. I always do. Tonight more." May's eyes flicked to the north and then back to Harlan. "Everything you're thinking," she said. "Don't." "Don't which part?" Her mouth made a small, tired smile. "Any of it." She nodded once and led the child away. The girl looked back over her shoulder at Harlan and then at the ridge as if deciding which one was bigger. She didn't let go of May's hand. Harlan stood alone again until Rig came off the roof and joined him on the porch. "By supper," Rig said. "We hold a talk," Harlan said. "That ever work?" Rig asked. "Sometimes," Harlan said, "when both sides bring something other than powder." "And what do we bring?" "Truth," Harlan said. Rig huffed. "Not much of a shield." "It's what I've got," Harlan said. They walked down off the porch and into the street that had been theirs all day and wouldn't be theirs after sundown. The sun slid behind the ridge. The shadows lengthened like someone pulling a blanket that wasn't big enough to cover a body. By the time the supper bell would have rung, if there had been a bell for such things, the war camp's fires were open mouths in the gloom. Drums started, slow and low, like a heartbeat you only notice when the room goes quiet. Harlan felt the locket against his chest like a second pulse. Rig adjusted his hat brim, like that might fix the line of the night. They crossed the creek. Men in paint turned their faces to watch. No rifle came up. The horses blew. Crow in the water stood at the big fire's edge. He didn't speak when they arrived. He let silence make them honest. Harlan raised his hands, empty. "We came," he said. Crow looked at Rig. His eyes didn't move anywhere else. "You pulled a string," he said in English that sounded like he had taught it to himself while walking alone. "I found a grave you didn't mark," Rig said. Crow's mouth twitched. "We marked it. Your eyes are not the right kind to see." "Whose grave?" Harlan asked. Crow's head turned a fraction, the bone necklace shifting like rain. "You will know," he said, "before dawn." Rig's face didn't change. Harlan's gut did. "What do you want?" Harlan asked. "Balance," Crow said. "Bring the girl. Bring the locket. Bring your quiet. We will leave your houses standing." Harlan did not look back across the creek. He did not look at May's little place with the lilac bush that always bloomed too early and frosted at the edges. He did not look at the church. He didn't look at anything but Crow. "Which girl?" he asked, though he knew. "The one whose blood speaks both tongues," Crow said. "She has a paper name and a bone name. Tonight, we ask both to stand in the same light." Harlan felt the whole town lean, even though he and Rig were the only ones standing at the fire. He heard the drums, and under them he heard something else. A rope whispering in a draft high up and far away. "By sunrise," Crow said, and for the first time Harlan heard something like sorrow in the man's voice, small as a bead hidden in a big hand. "By sunrise, the world must weigh itself and choose." The fire spat. The smell of meat rode the smoke to where the town began, and the fear lived. Harlan nodded once. "We'll come," he said. They turned back across the creek under a sky that would not rain and a bell that would not ring. Yet. The town's shadows let them in. Doors closed without sound. A dog whined and was hushed with a hand. Rig said, "That's the storm." "That's the storm," Harlan agreed. He touched the locket through his vest, like a man checking for a wound he couldn't see. By supper, a war camp had formed outside town. By dawn, the town would either be smaller by one child or bigger by one war. And somewhere between the two, on a line of creek bed no wider than a man's shoulders, the sheriff would have to hold a quiet that didn't want to be held. By dusk, the fires on the flats looked like a necklace of orange eyes watching the town. Smoke moved low across the creek, carrying the smell of mesquite and meat. The drums beat slow, steady as a clock with no hands. Harlan tied a strip of white cloth to a stick. "Walk beside me," he told Rig. "No heroics." "I don't do heroics," Rig said. They crossed the creek in silence. Warriors in paint turned to watch. No one spoke. The ground was soft from an earlier rain, and the air was thick enough to drink. Crow in the water stood at the largest fire, bone necklace gleaming, red paint across his cheekbones. His eyes were still water. He raised a hand. The drums stopped. "You sent for me," Rig said. "I sent for the man who broke a grave," Crow said. "I found a locket," Rig answered. "Didn't know it was yours." "It belonged to my son," Crow said. "He died 12 summers. His mother, Elara, wore that picture. She lies with the wind now. The locket was to keep him company in the dark. Harlan's stomach tightened. "What do you want?" Crow's gaze never moved. "The girl. Your schoolmarm keeps her. She has my blood." May Mercer's lilac bush flashed in Harlan's mind. "You're certain?" "I am." "She doesn't even know you," Harlan said. "She knows her blood," Crow said. "Bring her before the last light leaves your bell tower. Bring milk, a blanket, and the locket. No guns. We leave, and your town keeps its walls." "And if we don't?" Harlan asked. "We count your dead until it feels like balance," Crow said. They returned to town under a sky turning the color of tarnished copper. May opened the door before Harlan knocked. She saw his face and shook her head. "No. They'll burn us out," Harlan said. "We can't stop 30 riders." "She's mine," May said. "I found her half frozen after the raid. Fed her. Named her Lark." Rigg said, "Go with her to the camp. Speak to her aunt. Make it a talk, not a trade." Harlan checked the bell tower through the pines. "We're out of minutes," he said. May looked at the girl on the floor with her marbles. "If I come, you both stay with me." "We will," Harlan said. They walked through the street. Faces appeared in doorways. A man called, "Give her up, and they'll take the next one." Harlan didn't stop walking. At the creek, Crow's sister stepped into the firelight. Her eyes were Ilara's eyes. She whispered to Lark in a tongue the girl didn't understand. Lark only gripped her doll tighter. "One night," Crow said finally. "At first light, she chooses. No guns, no lies." It wasn't safety. It was a razor's edge that only looked like mercy. The fire snapped and threw long shadows over the camp. Lark slept under May's arm, doll clutched to her chest, the gold locket resting against her small fist. Saya, the aunt, sat close, knees drawn up, eyes on the girl like she was memorizing her face. Crow moved among his men, checking horses, checking the edge of the dark. He stopped by May. "Dawn," he said. "We keep the words." May nodded once. "Dawn." Harlan stayed at the creek's edge, hat low, eyes scanning the far bank toward town. Rigg sat with his back to a wagon wheel, rifle resting easy across his knees. "Paper collar," Harlan muttered. Rigg didn't look up. "Preacher?" "Wit. Always walking where he's not asked. Crow says someone dug that grave before you found it." "You think it was him?" "I think he likes to tidy things that don't belong to him," Harlan said. The creek whispered under the moon. From the other side came only the stillness of a town waiting for orders. Harlan and Rigg made a slow circle through the camp. The warriors eyed them, but didn't interfere. At the far edge, the view cleared enough to see the white church door and the dark line of the bell rope swaying. "Think he'll try?" Rigg asked. "He'll try," Harlan said. "And if he rings, the town will come with rifles." Rigg glanced toward May and the child. "Then I'll keep close." Harlan crossed back alone. The street was almost empty, but the church glowed with lamplight. Whit was inside, hands wrapped on the rope, working oil into its length. "Evening, Sheriff," Whit said without turning. "You've been to the Shale Hills?" Whit's hands stilled. "What do you think you know?" "Crow says you dug up his boy." "They bury wrong," Whit said simply. "I put him where heaven can find him." "And started this," Harlan said. Whit turned, face warm in the lamplight. "Better a quick fight than slow ruin. You ring that bell, men will die." Whit's smile was almost pity. "Men die for less." Harlan stepped in and took him by the wrist. "Not tonight." From the shadows beyond the church, rifles shifted. Sam Bixby stepped forward. "You're not locking up our preacher." Whit lifted his chin, speaking to them, not Harlan. "At dawn, we ring. We take back what's ours." The crowd murmured agreement. Harlan's grip tightened. If you ring, there's no pulling it back. Whit's voice stayed gentle. Then you'd better be ready to choose, Sheriff. Harlan left him standing in the lamplight and rode hard for the camp. Crow met him at the water line. Your town brings hate? Crow asked. They bring fear, Harlan said. Looks the same in the dark. Rig came to meet him. We've got until dawn, he said. Harlan glanced at May, holding Lark. The girl stirred in her sleep, fingers tightening on the locket. Then we keep watch, Harlan said. Rig's eyes stayed on the bell tower. Yeah, he said. We keep watch. Dawn pushed a thin silver seam into the sky. The camp stirred. Across the creek, the town shifted too. Men in hats, rifles at the ready, the church door already open. The bell rope swayed like it could feel the sun coming. Whit stepped into the doorway, pale collar bright. His eyes went to Lark, standing between May and Saya. Bring her, he called, before they take more. No, Harlan said. She chooses when the sun touches the bell. Crow's voice carried from the fire. One breath, Sheriff. The wind stiffened. Whit moved, slow but sure, toward the rope. Rig stepped forward. Don't, he said. Whit didn't stop. The Lord asks for courage. And you're asking for blood, Rig answered. Whit caught the rope. The bell gave a soft, uncertain sound. Just enough. Men on both sides lifted rifles. Horses shied. Stop! May's voice cracked the air. She pulled Lark forward, held her high so both banks could see her face. Look at her. This is who you're ready to kill for. Silence, except for the creek. The sun crept higher, touching the bell's bronze lip. Harlan nodded once to the girl. Go on, Lark. She looked at May, then at Saya, then at Crow. Her hand rose slowly and pointed to the creek between them. A ripple went through both banks. Both, May whispered. Crow's eyes softened. Balance, he said. He turned to his warriors. They eased their rifles down. Whit's jaw worked, but the moment was gone. The crowd behind him wavered, uncertain now. Sam lowered his gun. Others followed. Harlan stepped up to the church, took the rope from Whit's grip. No more rings, he said. Whit's smile was gone. This isn't over. It is for today, Harlan said. Back at the creek, Lark stood ankle-deep in the water, May on one side, Saya on the other. Crow came to the edge but didn't cross. One day, he told the girl, you'll walk my side and hers. She nodded solemnly, still clutching her doll. The camp stayed. The town stayed. And in the strip of water between them, the child played, her laughter small but clear, the bell above them still and silent in the rising sun.